Good evening, Davóne Tines and honored company. It is my privilege to welcome you all to the Harvard Arts Medal ceremony for the incomparable Davóne Tines. My name is Saman de Silva, and on behalf of Harvard College Opera, we are privileged to honor an alumnus of our organization from back in 2009 when it was called Dunster House Opera. As the next generation of Harvard opera singers, we hold dearly Davóne's commitment to cultivating a future of opera that embraces and amplifies untold and neglected stories. We look forward to inhabiting the future crafted through hands like Davóne's. For his work, we have nothing but gratitude. Our gift today to Davóne is the Act 1 trio of Mozart's opera Così fan tutte, entitled Soave sia il vento.
Thank you so much to Ben Rossen from Lowell House Opera and to Harvard College Opera for that beautiful opening. Good afternoon. My name is Fiona Coffey. I'm the director of the Office for the Arts, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you to the 30th Harvard Arts Medal ceremony honoring visionary artist Davóne Tines, class of 2009. The Arts Medal was established in 1995. It recognizes excellence and demonstrated achievement in the arts by a Harvard or Radcliffe alum. It is awarded to an individual who has achieved distinction in the arts and who has made a special contribution to the good of the arts. The Harvard Arts Medal is one of the university's highest distinctions. and is traditionally reserved for honorees who have achieved excellence in their field over the course of a lifetime. Tonight, we celebrate a groundbreaking artist who redefines lifetime achievement in the most meaningful way. Davóne is the youngest recipient of the Harvard Arts Medal in its history. This is a reflection of the profound and undeniable ways that his work is already changing the world of opera with a force and urgency that cannot be overlooked. Through his performances, Davóne engages boldly with issues of race, identity, sexuality, social justice, while expanding the very boundaries of opera. His work draws from a powerful musical lineage: spirituals, gospel, R&B, pop, jazz, musical theater, and more. He has brought new voices, composers, and collaborators into the world of opera and opened doors for Black artists across the field. Davóne is not just expanding the operatic tradition, he is fundamentally reshaping it. Davóne's journey in opera began right here at Harvard, where he performed his first operatic role in Stravinsky's The Rake's Progress with Harvard College Opera in 2009. In a review, the Harvard Crimson noted that, quote, Tines in particular shone in both his sotto voce singing and his demonic fury during the graveyard scene, a prescient review from the earliest part of Davóne's career. What many of us have had the privilege to witness since this early debut is something rare. Davóne has the ability to make each audience member feel that his performance is just for them. There's a profound openness, a deep vulnerability in his performances that invites a one-on-one connection with the audience. This is the kind of artistry that changes people, that makes us feel fully seen, that reminds us of our shared humanity. Very few artists have the courage or the grace to invite an audience into such honest communication, to lead with so much vulnerability and so much heart. And tonight, we are honored to celebrate that heart, that courage, and that undeniable voice. I want to express my gratitude to President Garber for continuing to uplift the arts as an important value at Harvard and as a vital contribution to the public good. And a very special thank you to Davóne's family and friends. Thank you for the love and support that has helped shape this extraordinary artist and person. Your presence with us tonight makes this celebration all the more meaningful. Davóne, it is such an honor and such a proud moment for Harvard to celebrate you tonight. Congratulations. So joining us now is artist and scholar, Dr. Chistopher Sierra, who teaches voice across many renowned Boston institutions, including Harvard's Holden Voice Program and Boston Conservatory at Berkeley. He recently made his solo debut with the Lyric Opera of Chicago. Welcome, Dr. Sierra.
Thank you, Fiona. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, President Garber. It is an honor to be a part of this year's celebration of the Harvard Arts Medal, and an even greater honor to introduce this year's recipient, Davóne Tines, an artist whose presence redefines the very idea of what presence means. If you've read about Davóne's career, you've likely encountered some of the headlines that he's a path-breaking bass baritone, a Harvard alum, Juilliard graduate, a creator of genre-defying works blending classical music with gospel, spirituals, protest music, and more. You may have read that The New Yorker called him one of the most powerful voices of our time. All of this is true, but none of it fully prepares you for the quiet radicalism of who he is, because Davóne's artistry isn't just heard, it's felt. It's not performance for performance's sake, but an invitation, a call to be more human with each other. When I asked Davóne about his earliest musical memory, he didn't mention a stage or a conservatory. He told me about being a toddler rolling around on the floor of Providence Baptist Church in rural Virginia. There, music wasn't performance. It was something far more sacred, something communal, something necessary. Songs were sung to celebrate births and grieve deaths. There was no divide between art and life. That early experience lit the spark for everything that would follow. Davóne doesn't call himself an activist, and yet when he sings, people change. He told me that if you're an othered person in society, Black, queer, non-conforming, then simply telling your truth can be seen as political. But Davóne is not trying to make a political statement. He's trying to make a personal one. And in doing so with such honesty and specificity, his work naturally becomes part of the broader movement toward justice. He described working with renowned American theater director and Harvard alum Peter Sellers on the world premiere of Kaya Sariaho's Only the Sound Remains in 2016, a piece rooted in Japanese folklore. Peter said to him, "I cast you in this because this role is you." And in that moment, Davóne saw the role not as a stretch, but as a mirror. It wasn't about identity categories. It was about humanity. This is the through line in Davóne's work, putting the human first. As a scholar of performance, I can say with clarity and certainty, Davóne's work is not simply additive, it's transformational. He reconfigures the very terms of engagement. What he offers is a kind of epistemological shift. He asks us not just what opera can be, but who it must center, how it can listen, and why it matters now. Opera has long been tethered to Eurocentric traditions, preserved through repetition more than reinvention. Davóne breaks that cycle, not with rebellion, but with radical integration of genre, identity, and truth. His presence compels institutions like ours to rethink who opera is for and what opera can be. Whether he's performing Malcolm X at Detroit Opera or reimagining the legacy of Paul Robeson at Carnegie Hall, Davóne doesn't just step into a role. He brings the full weight of his curiosity, care, and craft. He gets to know every technician, every usher, every janitor in the workspace because in his eyes, respect isn't hierarchical, it's holistic. He told me a story that I believe embodies who he is. When leading Zoom meetings, Davóne opens with two questions. Where in the world are you? And what are you thankful for? Simple, but deeply intentional. He wants to know your reality, not just what you're doing, but how you're doing. Because to Davóne, artistry begins with that kind of presence, that kind of care. His collaborators don't just praise his voice, they praise his integrity. They feel seen. And that creates better art. Not because it's more polished, but because it's more honest, more human. Davóne challenges opera and classical institutions to ask the hard questions. Why are we doing this work? Who is it for? And who are we leaving behind? When I asked him what legacy he hopes to leave, he said this: "I hope I've given people a clear and rich invitation to find out who they are and to express just that." It's simple, and yet, in a world obsessed with labels, achievements, and appearances, It's revolutionary. Davone doesn't sing to impress, he sings to connect, to close the distance between the stage and the seat, between one identity and another, between self and society. And perhaps that's why, after hearing Davone sing about Paul Robeson, a private banker in the audience told him they were scrapping their prepared remarks for a finance conference. Instead, they would speak about justice and responsibility. Davone has that effect. Through his intentional artistry, he makes people remember what truly matters. So today, as the university honors him with the Harvard Arts Medal, I invite you to do what Davone always does. Put the human first. See the accolades, of course, but also see in the heart of the artist. Because the real question he wants to leave us with isn't about his voice or his accolades or his technique. It's the simplest, most radical question of all. How are you? Please join me in welcoming the 2025 Harvard Arts Medalist, Davóne Tines, in conversation with Harvard alum and Artistic Director of American Repertory Theater, Diane Paulus.
What an amazing introduction. So articulate and inspiring. Thank you for that. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We're here to have a conversation. I feel like I want to scrap all my notes and start over again. I've had the incredible experience of actually getting to direct Davone in Matacoin's opera, The Crossing, which the ART commissioned and premiered. And, but actually our relationship began before that. Maybe I'm gonna just start there.
Sure.
So when Davone graduated from Harvard with a concentration in sociology, is that right? He wasn't going to Juilliard quite yet. In fact, he came and he became an intern at the ART. And we had a theater on Arrow Street that we were turning into what some of you may remember as Oberon. And one of Davone's first jobs was to help us paint the walls and transform the whole venue into this cool club. Now that I think about it, of course you were at the beginning of Oberon, because the coolness was rubbing off already. And you worked for us for about the year, and I remember you coming and saying, you know, I think I want to go to Juilliard. I think I want to take that leap. So I know I'm meeting students on campus right now that are thinking about choices, obviously, that they want to make with their lives. And I wonder if you could just take us back to that moment, and what was that light bulb? What were the confluence of things, if there were a confluence, that made you say, I want to pursue this?
Completely. First of all, hello. How are you?
All right.
And it's an absolute honor to be here, and it's lovely to talk with you, Diane. Confluence of things leading to choices. So yes, I remember the beginning of things at ART, painting the walls at Oberon, you know, a lot of black and purple paint, and couldn't wash off for days. But that was kind of my first on-the-ground work after leaving undergraduate here. And undergraduate here was such a broad and beautiful experience. I got my first experience as an arts administrator, leading the Harvard Active Orchestra and the choirs, and then coming to Oberon and ART really opened my eyes to all of the different nooks and crannies of creating art and arts administration. And I studied sociology in particular because I wanted to understand why culture created and propagated art, so I could perhaps understand how to help administrate it. And the first time I got to really see that in practice was working with and under you, especially, you know, your love and determination to make theater a populist, engagement. That was very, very inspiring to say, no, it really is for people in a real way, not to just show things, but to connect things. After that point, I was thinking, where would I go next? Conservatory was in the mix of the ideas, but also my grandparents always wanted me to go to school that would lead to a desk job. So I found a few desks in a way. Leaving ART, I worked in a lot of different arts administration jobs for a little bit of time. I worked for the National Shrine in Washington, D.C., singing for the choir. I worked for a national educational nonprofit connecting underprivileged and high potential students to academic and artistic mentors. And the thing that kind of was the bridge into singing was first stage managing at George Mason University for the opera program. And they liked how things were organized, and so they asked me to be the production manager. And so in doing that, I got to see and produce an entire season of opera. So I got to see the inner workings of it from beginning to end. I saw kids audition. I saw them go through rehearsals. We put them through tech, and we did it, maybe 7 or so times. So I thought, oh, I see how it goes. I think I could do that myself. And I had a volition that I wanted to say something, and I didn't know what that was. I knew that people paid attention to my voice, and so I thought that would be the conduit through which I could say something, through singing. But in order to do that, I knew I needed to develop it, and I knew I needed to ground my technique. And so going to Juilliard was a choice to help to that end. I thought all my friends were going to grad school. So I thought I should go for something. Maybe I go to business school and formalize administration. That seemed dreadful, and so I thought, okay, I'll try for conservatory, and if I get in, I'll go. I got into Juilliard, and I took that as a sign to pursue it. But last little bit, in my first production in Peter J. Sharp Theater there, with other grad students, we're sitting backstage, and there's a soprano who is holding a fan, just giving props, and it's the first time she's using this fan, and she kept kind of fidgeting with it and complaining, saying, I really don't like this thing. And I said, do you know it took about 15 people 7 months to put that fan in your hand? I think you should try to figure it out. So I felt quite blessed by a broad array of experience, so that when I stepped into the middle of the machine, I had an understanding of how the machine worked.
Wow, okay. I wasn't quite aware of all the stage management and production management, but that's giving me a light bulb, because I think, as you may know, everyone, Davóne is not just one of the most sought-after performers. You are also now composing, creating, making work. And that point of view of understanding what it all takes is illuminating for me in terms of your trajectory. And I wonder if we could just stay on that for a second, because being a big famous opera star is a lot, and could be all you ever might do in your life. So I wonder, when you get opportunities like this last year, right, at El Nino, that was your debut at the Met? So amazing debut at Metropolitan Opera. When you are in your role as opera singer, can you turn all the other stuff off? The awareness of the system, the sociology background, the analysis of the larger picture and what the creation is?
Yes and no. I mean, I think it lets me enter into productions with a broad perspective and a lot of knowing, and the ability to build community in the rehearsal room, because that community you carry on stage with you and will continue to provide support. But you start from day one.
So how do you do that?
I get the call sheet with everyone's photo, and I memorize the entire cast and the crew. With El Nino, there were 65 people.
Wow.
And so that took about 4 or 5 days. And so another lesson from Peter Sellers, greet every single person at the top of a rehearsal period and say goodbye to everyone on the way out. And that was particularly useful when doing Malcolm X. You know, it was a huge role in Anthony Davis's amazing opera. It's 3.5 hours long, and you know, you're just singing all these speeches over and over again. And it was a challenge in a lot of different ways. But you know, I did the due diligence of getting to know everyone and saying hello to everyone and goodbye to everyone. And slowly, you start to build a familiarity that makes a foundation of community. And later in the process, when it really got tough and hard, I really did feel like the buoyancy of that community that I was able to be a part of creating. So that's been an instrumental thing.
Amazing. Let's go into opera a little bit now, since we're talking about great operas like El Niño.
Oh, I didn't answer the second part of your question.
Yes, sorry.
Which is about, can I turn it all off?
Oh, yeah, can you turn it on?
Yes, because I feel quite blessed to be able to be a performer and realize that my body and alchemy are attuned to performing. And I love it the most because it's the only time that I feel completely present.
I was struck by the topic of presence, and I think it's something that we as artists have as part of what keeps us going, is this quest for presence, right? Whether it's being in a rehearsal and letting everything go away and just being utterly present for what's happening in the room, or having rehearsed everything within an inch of its life, but taking the stage, and you actually have to forget it all, and your job is to be present. And it's even more extraordinary to think about how you become present when you have all those technical demands. So can you speak about that? What does it mean to be present when you've got a score that's moving along, and a conductor and an orchestra and a technique and a high note coming? How do you not get ahead of yourself?
Yeah, I mean, part of it, of course, is preparation, you know, woodshedding, getting into the material and all of its levels and ways. I guess two things about process. So the first in learning a score, if you want to guide to that, I always work outside in. So to try to get the overall theme of the idea, then breaking it down maybe into its acts and understanding it as shape. You know, you're like, oh, Act 1 is happy, Act 2 is sad. You zoom into individual songs and you figure out how those function within the narrative. And then you see how those attach to the larger shape. So it's always in reference of the larger whole. And then you go down into the musical.
Some people make the director do that for them.
Well. It's nice to do it together.
This is a dream kind of collaborator when you have a performer who's thinking on the whole like that. I mean, truly.
And then, so you go from songs to musical phrases, you go from phrases to measures, you go from measures to individual notes. And by that time, you're able to contextualize every single choice within the larger whole. And I think that applies to a lot of other places too, you know, even on the institutional level, to understand the goal of the whole and how every single level within can be reflective of that goal. So that's one way, you know, to have a really depthful and broad understanding of the material itself. And then another way is just, you know, relying on the technique. Long story short, during the pandemic, you know, we all had to sit down in a lot of different ways. And I had been on the road for 10 years straight. And it was the first time I was in any place for longer than 2 months. And so during that time, when we were about 4 months in, I was like, oh, we're going to be here for a minute.
Yeah.
and I thought, I could take the opportunity to reassess and rebuild my technique. So I found a teacher who's really vicious, but great through Zoom, and we started meeting every 2 weeks, and I started going back to the basics.
Wow.
You know, what is your breath? What are the parts of your body? How do they all work together? And that was a wonderful year-long exploration. And then in working on this Robeson project, this album that I made with my band The Truth, who might be around here somewhere, it was about contending with an ancestor, Paul Robeson, and finding our connections. And in order to do that, I knew that I never wanted to impersonate him, but I wanted to understand him inside out. And so I would take really, really long showers. Those that know me know that this is my favorite place in the world, the shower, and listen to him for hours and try to mimic his technique, but also find how it worked. And what I found was he kind of has a perfect technique. Perfect bottom breath support, perfect frontal resonance and back resonance. So you're Paul Robeson, you know? but I say all that to say it was kind of like a finishing school to this rebuilding. And I feel very blessed now that, you know, in the past 4 or 5 years, I'm able to operate from that place of deep knowing of myself, because that allows freedom to make choices.
And that is a process.
Endless for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Back to opera for a second before we go to the amazing things like Robeson and the pieces you're creating now. I'm just curious to hear you talk about what about opera interests you, like interests with the capital I. You know, I think we tend to think of opera as this old fuddy-duddy form, but when you compare it to, say, the 2,000-year-old history of Western theater back to 5th century classical Athens, opera is really, in the Western sense of the word and understanding, 400 years old. It's actually an art form, really, it's a very young art form. If you think about Monteverdi's Orfeo, 1607, being maybe the first opera that has continued to be performed in the repertoire. So sometimes I marvel that opera gets that rap of being, this kind of old form, but when you compare it, it's relatively new as a form.
Completely.
And so I'm just curious, with all your interests and everything that makes you you, how do you think about opera? What is opera for you?
I never really thought about opera till my senior year here when I sang Stravinsky. No, that's when I first thought about it, depthfully, and I found kind of a visceral ability to express myself. So when I got to Juilliard, and it's a conservatory, it's a formal way of exploring, technique and how you can replicate that. In our past 10, 20 years of engaging opera, we get really stuck on the mid-20th century. That was kind of the last golden age of opera, and really, really incredible singers that a lot of us might know. And not to lecture too much, but I really do think that is maybe the fault or the outcome of the Industrial Revolution. It was a time when people's work was being divorced from their actual function, or their personage was divorced from their function. So factories, assembly lines. So people were seen as functionaries as opposed to holistic humans or artisans. And in that realm, institutions replicated that. And so opera singers became like pieces you put into a puzzle, as opposed to humans you created things with and for. And going to this earlier definition, 1600th, 17th century, the word opera, or opera in Italian, means work. It simply means work, or a work of art, perhaps. And it really came out of people hanging out, and bringing whatever they had. There were musicians, there were singers, there were dancers, there were people that, were good with scenography or what have you, and they would just make things that were telling stories, and it was all story-centric, but bringing everything they had individually to tell that story. And that's the definition of opera that I love. Its original idea, which is take what you have available to you and tell a compelling story. So I've tried, in finding myself and trying to connect to other things, trying to bring all the parts of the things I love and connect to simply tell compelling stories.
I wonder, do you feel like the opera house is also the kind of the 20th century institutional phenomenon that maybe reduces the opera singer to a functionary?
Perhaps, we can talk forever about the proscenium.
Yes.
And the complicated feel of it. And, there's always this kind of back and forth between, do we burn the space down and make something completely new, or do we utilize the space to its best potential? I don't know if we know that answer yet. I think there's ways to experiment on both sides. But I have enjoyed making things inside and outside of a traditional opera house. And doing that, or making that choice based on how can the story best be told. Sometimes people just need a frame, and you put things in the frame for people to see. Other times they need to be walking, or Yuval Sharon is an amazing director, staged an entire Wagner opera in a parking garage. So you would just interact with the extraordinary in the most ordinary place. So we're still finding it, I think.
Speaking of stories, I want to segue to Black Clown. I don't know how many people here saw The Black Clown. So this was a story, inspiration Langston Hughes' poem that Davóne had started working on and brought to us at the ART, and then it was pre-pandemic that we premiered it. And Davóne co-created it with Mike Schachter, the composer, and Zach Winokur, a common collaborator with Amok, the organization that Davóne is a part of, directed it, and it was at the ART and then went to Lincoln Center to really extraordinary acclaim. And it was just such a brilliant, what you described. Let's just tell the story with whatever we need, dance, shape, light. Can you talk a little bit about what Black Clown was for you in your artistic journey?
Long story short, which is the lie I tell every day, multiple times, the Black Clown was a really long and really important journey for me. It all started seated in the National Shrine, singing the choir of the Catholic Church. And, you know, after you go through about your 100th mass service, you maybe get a little bored. And I started to write an email to Michael saying, you know, we have a rich musical love between us. You know, we went to Harvard together. But I really want to sing something that really fits me, something that really lets me get in all the things that I haven't been able to explore. And so we thought we'd look at some poetry, and we thought we'd focus on Langston Hughes because we both loved him. And in that research, we found an extraordinary poem called The Black Clown in a very unknown group of poems by Hughes called The Negro Mother. And in that volume, he creates his own form of poetry, where there are two columns, one column titled The Poem and one column titled The Mood. And they were always meant to be delivered, you know, kind of theatrically,
Right.
and the mood would kind of tell you what to do.
Almost like his stage directions.
He wrote
Right.
a play, you know,
Yeah.
in a few 420 words or so. And when I read this poem, I was blown away. It was like someone had written everything that I wanted to say up until that point. Because in just those few words, Langston Hughes outlines the idea of a black man in America, you know, wearing the clown suit of oppression, you know, wearing the clown suit of caricature, and then very deftly walks through 300 years of American history, still in 420 words. And then at the end, this man is able to cast away the costume of a clown because he's realized his resilience and realized the lineage from which he's come. When I read that, it was just like fireworks, light bulbs, like, oh my gosh, if I could say this to as many people as possible, perhaps there'd be more empathy, perhaps there'd be more respect. So it further to finding the right medium through which to tell the story, and talking with Zach, you know, it was like Broadway-style musical, because it's like I wanted to put it out like a megaphone, you know, as bright as possible, as colorful as possible, so that you could connect to the joy of, you know, diversity and blackness, and also be really hit with the reality on the same scale. So that took a long time. You know, we developed it for 2 years before bringing it to ART, and then you were so supportive, and through 5-6 more years of development until we got to the stage. And it really was a personal triumph. And just one more thing about that, I try to take time with saying the things that I want to say. You know, friends, loved ones, colleagues are always encouraging of, you know, this kind of intentional effort. And it means that through reflection, you can kind of find the best way to tell something or to say something to someone. And I'm often asked, you know, maybe in different forums, you know, what is your thought on this social justice movement or this or that? Or what is your response to maybe experiencing racism in the workplace or what have you? And usually instead of giving an off-the-cuff answer, I say, you know, when I decided to grapple that question, it took me 9 years. So maybe you can view that piece of work or I can talk about it, but I'm not going to just say, you know, without any deeper consideration what the magnitude of that subject is.
So that makes me think about the role of art in the world right now, because so much of what we experience is reduced to sound bites and quick synthesis, you know, statements about things, and also a situation where you can just turn it on or off at will. And there's something about the long form of art, let alone the creation of it, which might take 9 years, and the inquiry that's involved in that, but what also an audience is invited to experience. So I wonder if you could, without making you make a statement, just maybe we could talk a little bit about the role of the artist right now in the world we're living in, and the kind of work that we need to live inside and make and continue to resource and put in the world. And what is that invitation?
One of the blessings and joys of being an artist is you get to pull things from places that don't already exist. You know, you get to imagine something or see the possibility of a way of being and then try to bring that into our physical and present reality. And part of that, you know, is just alchemically tied to who we are. You know, your cells exist a way, your eyeballs look at a different way. So, like, that's your perspective, right? And that is you interwoven into that thing. And that's also connected to just classical music in general. You know, when I was younger, I was told that classical music is the universal language, or it's the mode of expression, or what have you. And then as I got older, I realized that people, institutions, weren't doing things to make that statement true, but were still saying they were doing it. So I had to find for myself what that really, really meant. And for me, it came to a place of trying to find authenticity, which means one definition of authenticity is making sure that what is internal to you is also reflected in the external. So those things are in conversation and parody. Part of that also has meant just, you know, self-reflection and trying to be oneself. You know, we get lots of opportunities to try out different ways of doing it. This flavor, that flavor, you know, that's part of the joy as well. But a special thing, you know, yes, we can hold a mirror up to the world, but also we can model things. And by modeling them, you make them true for people, and then it allows it to be an invitation for people to do the same. So in my ongoing quest to, you know, understand all the parts of myself and put them together in a cohesive way, I'm trying to model that that's possible for everyone else. Artists, people, at large. You know, we are all multifaceted beings. We're made of so many things. We come from so many things. And it's important that we honor all those things and allow ourselves to be them at once, even when they contradict.
I think of André Gide, French writer, who had a quote that I think about a lot when I'm making work and working with actors. And he used to say, please don't understand me too quickly. And, you know, and that risk of understanding something too quickly and living in the exploration of it and the questions inside it. And I think when I experience art as an audience, I'm most touched when I don't understand it all, but I'm like, it's somehow touching me and it's making me think and kind of moving things around in my brain that I don't quite understand yet, you know. And I want to bring up a work of art that you could all go see still, that Davóne put together for an exhibit at the Cooper Hewitt in New York City, called Making Home is the exhibit. And you could describe more, but I'll say in a nutshell, I think artists were invited to create an art installation on this theme of home. And I'd love you to describe it to the audience, because when I saw it, it was exactly, I think, what we're speaking of. It was physical, it was visceral, I felt it, but I couldn't synthesize it quickly, but it kind of went in and was kind of operating on so many levels. And why don't you describe the rocking aspect of it, which is literal in this installation.
Completely. So it's also been a joy over the past few years to start moving into visual art and installations with different museums. And the curator of the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian asked me to be a part of this triennial and the concept of home, because they knew that my concept of home was really complex. I travel about 300 days a year. And that means that I'm always tasked with trying to make home wherever I go, and then trying to connect that to places I actually call home. And through about 2 years of conversation with Zach and also an incredible sculptor named Hugh Hayden, we went through all these iterations of like, what are these places I feel like home? Maybe it was like the dressing room at the Palais Garnier in Paris, where I did spend about 3 months, you know, and maybe it was my Harvard dorm room, or, you know, maybe just other parts of my life where I've spent some time. And we kept going through iterations, different ideas, models, symbols, and Hugh Hayden, who's a really incredible artist, I can't say that enough, very observant. He started as an architect and then became a sculptor through woodworking. and very laid back. So we had all these meetings, and it was getting close to us, like finally coming to an idea to present and execute. And I called him one day walking down, I don't know, 2nd Avenue South. I just remember this very clearly. I said, Hugh, what do you think? Like, of all the things we talked about, like, what do you think it is? And he says, well, in one of our meetings, maybe like 2 months ago, you were talking, and I made this sketch. And he texted me the sketch. And what it was a piano as a rocking chair, which he said, you know, of all the places we've talked about, it always seems to come back to your grandparents' living room. That's where I first played a piano. That's where I first learned songs, and a place I've returned to, you know, preparing roles in lots of different places and ways. And he said, you know, that seemed like a place of comfort and safety. And it seems like wherever you go, you're trying to recreate that. But it's always, you know, something that's unstable. You know, you try to find stability as you move about the world, and it's something that I'm trying to recapture, but can never quite recapture. And I felt like I was read. For you that know what that means. No, I was like, okay, thank you for reading me on this Tuesday.
Yeah.
And also just like the emotional reaction of like, yeah, you did see me and you saw what I was trying to do. And so that's what we made together. He made this beautiful carved rocking platform that's the same dimensions of the living room. It's about 10 by 12 feet. And then we worked with the curators to recreate verbatim and to scale everything in the room. And that was about a 7-month process of, you know, going home, photographing everything, measuring every teacup, 3D scanning multiple times the whole room, and then going through this process with a small group of people and saying, that's my great-grandmother's China imprint, or that's the statue my grandfather got in Japan in 1960. Just one last, I know I can go on about this, but my grandmother has this wingback chair with caning and like orange velvet. It's like the 70s. And on the first call, I said, you're never going to find that. Like, you know, maybe we'll borrow it. And the curator said, found it, same manufacturer, London this time. And it's like, wow. So just, you know, having the support of that institution, God help it. I was able to, you know, uplift my lineage in a certain way. And one more thing, the most touching moment of that creation was when it was about 2 weeks from it opening, and we had to write the text that would be on the placards. You know, the formal museum text that's like next to the piece of art. And you know, you go through formal crediting and all these you know specified things, and then we realized that we had to actually credit my grandmother as the original creator of the room, because you know we just replicated it, but she made it. So putting her name as the creator of a work of art within the Smithsonian was one of the most rewarding things I've ever been able to do, because she made that space out of love. She didn't make that space for people to see. She made what she thought would bring her family safety. And in order to honor that on that scale by the institution in our country that decides what's important to preserve is a lifetime achievement.
So.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
That's on exhibit at the Cooper Hewitt through July, so you should,
Check it out.
if next time you're there, definitely go see it. We have just a few minutes left. I wonder if you could speak about what you're thinking about now. What's next on the horizon? We know there was the incredible Robeson performance last year in New York, and your band, The Truth. Truth, right? It's called?
Yes. The Truth.
But maybe just give us a little insight into what's on the brain, what's in the soul,
Yes.
what's coming.
What's coming next week even is the next thing that we're up to. Further to long timelines, you know, I mean, I guess I'm young, but I mean,
the youngest.
I always feel like I'm the young person in the room saying like, take time,
Yeah.
slow down. And so this was part of a 4-year ideation. So a really incredible curator named Hamza Walker, who used to be with the Renaissance Society in Chicago, now leads a non-collecting gallery, commissioning gallery in LA called The Brick. And what they do is pick a subject matter and then create entire installations around that then go to different major museums. And so he and his team, for about 5 years, have been collecting decommissioned Civil War monuments. You know, after the time in 2017 with the tragedy that happened in Charleston, South Carolina at Mother Emanuel Church, they started looking into that research and, you know, going to the Daughters of the Revolution or going to certain municipalities and saying, can we have your Robert E. Lee statue? You know, or can we have the plinth that is there now that the statue's been dragged away and thrown into the river? So what does it mean to bring all of the detritus of people trying to reckon with America's history and put it on display, but in conversation with contemporary American works of art? And so I was very blessed to be one of 2 artists commissioned to make works. The other artist is the incredible Kara Walker. And in talking to Hamza over years, because, you know, I've been working my way into visual things, so I feel like he's been a mentor in that. And he was saying, you know, we really need something that affects the Mother Emanuel Church. It was the genesis of all of this. And I think what you do could perhaps be in service of that. So yeah, next week we're traveling to Charleston to shoot a really short music film with the incredible director, filmmaker Julie Dash, in order to memorialize but also honor and uplift that church. You know, I might sing later, and the final song that we sang is the song that's gonna be in that film. And it's not about memorializing through sadness or looking backwards. It's about, you know, moving from the foundation of that to become the phoenix that rises perhaps into joy.
That's just next week.
That's next week.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think, you know, you can all attest to the incredible depth of artistry that is Davóne Tines. And this conversation has only, I think, opened more windows into your process and given me a lot of inspiration. And I know for many of my colleagues here from the ART, as we think about our future, what we will hold as some North Stars for ourselves as we continue to fight the good fight of making art and trying to share it with the world in a way that is capacious and generous and for the good. So thank you, Davóne, for your incredible words.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you.
And it is now my great privilege to welcome the president of Harvard University to the stage to confer the official Harvard Arts Medal. So if you please join me in giving the biggest and warmest welcome for our cherished president, Alan M. Garber.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Diane. I am just thrilled to be here, both for Arts Fest and for our guest of honor today. For me, Arts Fest and the transformation of our campus that occurs with it is the true beginning of spring here in Cambridge. And I might add, the first glimpse of the last days of this semester. Many thanks to those of you in the Office of the Arts and beyond for enlivening the university with your creativity at one of the busiest times of the academic year. Thank you for that. Many thanks as well to those of you who have been sharing your own work over the course of the festival. All of us are extremely fortunate to be the recipients of your time and talent, and we thank you for giving so generously of both. I want to share just a few words about art and art making and what they mean here at Harvard. And I have to say, I can't improve on the discussion that we just had. Thank you, Davóne, for those really inspiring words. When we create art, examine art, take simple pleasure in art, the list goes on, we embrace a distinct aspect of ourselves, of our community, and our university. As my twin sister, who is an artist, reminds me, art conveys truth in ways that are layered and unique. It enlarges our hearts as well as our minds. It compels us to deepen our understanding and to expand our perspective. At its best, it challenges us to appreciate the world and one another in new ways, creating the possibility for sympathy and empathy, for real and lasting connection. When we look closely and listen carefully, when we share that experience, we find meaning that we might not have found otherwise. That is what I felt the first time that I shared a stage with our medalist. It was 6 years ago during commencement, and I stood just a few feet away from him as he honored Lonnie Bunch with a performance of Lift Every Voice and Sing. Everybody who was there was moved, and I have to say, to see that enormous crowd that day, transfixed by a powerful yet sensitive voice, filling Tercentenary Theater, was to see Harvard anew. In fact, for the first time in my many years as provost, to see the sheriff of Middlesex County upstaged by somebody else at commencement. That is a gift that only art and a truly outstanding artist could give. Today, that artist joins a rare company of alumni and faculty who have created worlds of possibility and potential with art, with architecture, with music, poetry, and writing, who have blazed paths on screen and on stage, composed and curated, danced and directed, and advocated for communities enriched by the arts, alumni and friends who have made the world more beautiful and more interesting. Now, it is my pleasure to invite our medalist and the director, Fiona, of the Office for the Arts to the podium. I am very blessed, he has said, to do only the things I love. We are very blessed that returning to Harvard to be embraced by our community is among those things. Davóne Tines, we are honored by your presence here today. On behalf of the university, I am delighted to present you the 2025 Harvard Arts Medal.
Say a few words. Thank you. I deeply appreciate everything that's been said today, everything that's been noted about anything I might have been up to. It's quite a tall bill to stand up to. And I, in reflection over the past few days, I think the only way that I'm able to do it, to stand up to that bill, is because I don't stand here alone. I stand here as the descendant of many, many generations of people before this country, but also within this country. Our lineage within this country started with my great-great-great-grandmother Easter, who was a slave. And her lineage continued to produce indentured servants, farmers, stoneworkers, artisans, and furthermore, there's a really great statement that Yo-Yo Ma uses quite a lot, which is it takes 3 generations to make an artist. The first generation to pull the family out of poverty, the second generation to become educated, and then the third generation has the freedom to become an artist. So my grandparents' generation, my grandfather and grandmother working together, changed the economic profile of our family through their incredible hard work. Our mother became educated and became enthralled in the arts and many other intellectual pursuits. And that allowed me the foundation and the freedom to become an artist. But it's not just artists, it's other people that are able to engage in the world in broader ways. So I'm also very, very happy and proud that my sibling is here this afternoon. And I just have to say a little bit because, Michael, who is here, has just finished their final classes at the University of Baltimore Law School. And in addition, has recently become a contributing researcher to the Harvard Law Review in the realm of civil rights and criminal justice reform. And I say that to say, getting to have Michael as a sibling has been really formative in my views on how my work fits into the world. During the pandemic, we sat through all of the horrors, and Michael was up to work that dealt in voter access. And I was trying to ask, I was so curious in that time, what really leads people to change? What really leads people to realize there's maybe another way to consider? And they said that it's always the emotional appeal. And I took that to mean, if you tell a story, you can connect to people emotionally. And that's why I don't necessarily consider my work activistic. There are people that work tirelessly to make actual change to the rules of this land. And that is, I think, what the true work of activism is. But I get the privilege and honor of pointing to that work. I get to hopefully draw on emotions and say, hey, how about you look over there and utilize that emotion to affect larger change that's foundational for this land. And the way that I've been trying to do it, as we've discussed a bit, is through honesty, through vulnerability, through connecting with people. And what that's also meant is trying to understand all the parts of myself so that I can be all of those things at once. As I said, in order to invite people to do the same. And right now, all I can really feel is gratitude. I'm grateful in so many ways. And I wanted to share that there are many, many different ways that someone can share gratitude. You can think it within yourself. You can, give a speech or a proclamation. You could share it in song. You can also think of gratitude as an ongoing practice, something that you wake up and think about every single day. And in doing that, I think you'll stay a little bit present. A way that I like to say it, or one way to say it, is through contemporary gospel music. This is a song from the late 20th century. It goes, I am grateful for the things that you have done. Yes, I'm grateful for the victories we've won. I could go on and on and on about your works, because I'm grateful, grateful, so grateful just to praise you, Lord, flowing from my heart are the issues of my heart. It's gratefulness. And another way that gratefulness can be expressed is through the long tradition of Gregorian chant, but through the lens of a queer Appalachian woman. It sounds something like, Gloria in excelsis Deo, et in terra pax hominibus bone voluntatis. Laudamus te, benedicimus te, adoramus te, glorificamus te. Another way is through the Negro spiritual.
C.S. Lewis called joy an unsatisfied desire which is itself more desirable than any other satisfaction. He says that joy must be sharply distinguished both from happiness and pleasure. Because happiness depends on what's happening. But it does not matter what's happening, you can still have joy. Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just,
dark midnight was my cry. Dark midnight was my cry. Dark midnight was my cry. But give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. So you may have all of this world, but give me Jesus.
whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report,
When I come to die,
If there be any virtue, and if there be any praise,
Nobody but Jesus. You may have all of this world. Said you may have all of this here world. Said you may have all of this here world, but give me Jesus.
think on these things.
Now, another way of expressing gratitude is through presence, which also might mean volition, which also might mean awareness.
The house I live in, the friends that I have found, the folks beyond the railroad, and the people all around, the worker and the farmer, the sailor on the sea, the folks who built this country, that's America to me. But we know this country will always have its way, with people sleeping soundly while their rotting dreams decay. It lays its trap for willing to justify the killing while racking up the billing on the debt to never pay, while truth becomes banished and justice never won. Our hopes to find some freedom still just raisins in the sun. It's sad to see it failing. It's the way it's always been, to never cleanse the staining of its bloody primal sin. 'Cause that's America. What's America? Who's America? Where's America? Find America for me.
And one final way to express gratitude is through the American tradition of folk song, but told in a contemporary lens, which is how I like to do it.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, oh, I'm gonna let it shine. said, this little light of mine, oh, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. All through my home, oh, I'm gonna let it shine. All through my home, that I'm gonna let it shine. All through my home, oh, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.